Kamala Harris called it right from the start.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up.
And she also called out why.
Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
And with all due respect to Harris, she wasn't saying anything that all of us didn't already know. We all knew because rule number one with Trump is that he is a babbling idiot and will always tell you what he's going to do, either through a straight-up lie, through impromptu babbling, or by making a promise. Trump said the war in Ukraine would be over within 24 hours of him being elected. That's when we all knew. We all knew that what he meant is that he would tell Ukraine no more aid unless you call a ceasefire and allow Russia to keep what they've taken. It was as plain as the orange dye on his skin. And you can see it while he was shucking and jiving on the stage as Harris calls him out. Those expressions say two things. Oh no, I wouldn't. I'm big bad Donald Trump. But you also know he's thinking, how can a black woman talk to me like that? And so now, the sellout we all knew was going to happen is underway. And in the process, Trump is betraying our allies as well. No surprise there. And as always with Trump, is the opening stupid lie that everyone knows is false, but he makes it anyway as the setup for his behavior. Here's Trump's setup lie on Ukraine.
And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
Ukraine started it. You have to admit, Trump is a master manipulator because he paralyzes the left every time he makes one of his fly in the face of reality, only a moron believes it lies. We're too busy trying to get our eyes to come back from the inside of our cerebral cortex to offer a quick counter. And then Trump told another lie, claiming Ukraine would not meet with the U.S.
And then Scott Bessent actually went there and was treated rather rudely because essentially they told him no, and Zelensky was sleeping and unavailable to meet him. He traveled many hours on the train.
Yeah, only problem is this little video.
Put it on
But it's not enough that we
shared values. We have shared security.
So unfortunately, while we're too busy trying to recover our sight, the G7 stepped in. The Financial Times reported that the G7 is trying to counter Trump's lie by issuing a statement to mark the anniversary of the Russian invasion by calling out Russia's unprovoked aggression. But always Putin's puppet, Trump, is refusing to sign on to the statement. They write, the U.S. is opposing calling Russia the aggressor in a G7 statement on the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, threatening to derail a traditional show of unity, according to 5 Western officials familiar with the matter. And not only that, but Trump is trying to block Zelensky from speaking at a virtual G7 meeting on Monday. As the Financial Times writes, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's participation at a virtual G7 summit on Monday has also not yet been agreed to, the officials said. So instead, Trump's team wants to modify the language. As the Financial Times writes, the Trump administration's insistence on softening the language reflects a broader shift in U.S. policy to describe the war as the Ukraine conflict, said 2 people familiar with the matter. Recent statements from the U.S. Department of State use similar wording, including a readout from Secretary of State Marco Rubio's meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Riyadh that twice mentions the conflict in Ukraine. So make no mistake about it, Trump is not only betraying Ukraine, but is betraying our allies as well, cutting them off at the knees, both diplomatically and economically, using U.S. influence to weaken their commitment to Ukraine. Newsflash, it's not going to work. Trump may want to sell out Ukraine, but the rest of Europe, including Turkey, does not. In fact, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has already said he is willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And if Britain is willing to do it, then you can expect France, Poland, Canada, Germany, and probably Australia are willing to as well. Then MAGA world will cheer that Trump kept us out of war. But all the while they are doing that, they know deep down that their fathers and grandfathers are ashamed of them. But it's worse than that. Trump has already rescued Russia from economic collapse, which is bad news for Europe. On October 6th, Fortune magazine announced that the Russian economy can't sustain Putin's war anymore. And then even last week, it was reported that the central bank says that attempts to slow inflation have failed. Increases in the key rate to a 2-decade high. It has so far proven powerless to slow the acceleration of inflation, the Russian central bank admitted. But now, as a result of Trump siding with Russia, the economy has been saved. The ruble is closer to 90, down from 115. The Russian stock market rallied, with investors now optimistic. And they can now avoid sanctions better because Trump dismantled or crippled agencies that enforced them. And good economic news for Russia is bad economic news for Europe, which now that Orange Mussolini is in charge, has to stand against Russia by itself. Congratulations, MAGA. You just destroyed the United States and what it stands for. And no Gulf of America is going to restore that. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.